So those throat movements to work just right. They ain't going to learn anything from that turkey. So why put a turkey in front of the school system? You know, here's a fact. I just read this poll that just earlier this week. 25% of Americans believe that the sun revolves around the earth. And you wonder why we're in the trouble that we're in on this planet.
And about 50% don't know what evolution is.
And you know, evolution's a crock of crap anyway.
Oh yeah, but they don't even know. But they don't even know what the explanation of the crap is. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, you know, you ask them what year the War of 1812 was for, they'll say, I don't know. Now.
Oh yeah, it's like jaywalking. Jay Leno did this all the time in New York, going around asking people simple questions like, "Who's the current president of the United States?" Richard Nixon. You know, it's just freaking retarded.
The first part of my professional life, I worked in the laboratory. And, you know, I eventually got tired of dealing with chemicals and formulas and said, people are more interesting. And oddly enough, I went from something that was very introverted and forced myself into something that was very extroverted. I got into sales and marketing in telecommunications. And I spent actually more than 15 years in that industry. So I got to meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, and interact with a lot of people along the way. And I was still able to carry on my research. You see, there's, I forgot where I was going exactly with that one, but it brings us to a point, to a lot of different points when you look at the telecommunications industry in itself, or communications.
Yeah, that's where I used to work as well.
It's dealing with other people, but it's also, you know, what one of the reasons I liked it is I pretty much was able to do what I want, and you know what, I could see my outcome. And I was able to learn and apply different rules within metaphysics that I had learned along the way from the scientific aspect. It was now being applied in my everyday life. But the interesting thing was, metaphysics opened up the doors for me. I didn't just have one dream that came true. Actually, it never stopped. I was able to see, and still can see, future events. It's been part of my life all the way through my life. Back in 2002, the year 2000, I was trading commodities, and my broker asked me, "Who do you like for president?" And I said, "Who do I like, or who do I think is going to be the next president?" He said, "Well, both." Now, I don't get involved in politics. I just don't. I was told not to,
not Earth-based politics anyway.
Not exopolitics. Yeah, I do take sides there. Exopolitics just depends. Actually, exopolitics is what has brought Earth politics to fruition, because it was the Anunnaki that gave the Sumerians. Remember Sumeria, the cradle of civilization? It was the Anunnaki that gave them the idea or the instructions for both government and religion. Yeah. And we've been saddled with that crap ever since.
Well, apparently, those discoveries in ancient Sumeria happened kind of like overnight, and then they disappeared overnight just as quickly.
Well, you remember the Iraqi war? Not the first one, the second one, when we went into Baghdad, and all of a sudden all of the museums were looted?
Yeah, they tried to cover up all the evidence of the ancient world and what have you, because, look, if everybody knew how history really transpired and what have you, and they had artifacts to prove the such, almost every single institution would be revolted against, don't you think? Because they've just been lying to us this whole freaking time.
Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. Religion's been lying to us right from the beginning. Religion has lied to us about the information in the Bible, and I can prove that every religion, which is Christian or Judaism, Jewish-based, and this may even stretch over into Islam to some extent, has been lying to you, but I know Islam has been lying to you anyway because they all came from the same group. And here is the proof. And the proof is found right in the scriptures themselves. You go to Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and start reading at the 21st verse. It says, and I'll paraphrase this, I'll quote it the best that I can, and God said that it's not good for the man to be alone. So I'm going to create a helper for him. So he causes a sleep to come over the man. He opens the flesh, he removes a rib, closes the flesh, sends the rib down to genetic engineering with a note saying, can you please bioengineer a female from this genetic sample? Genetic engineering turns around and says, yep, okay. They turn around, they change the X chromosome out for the Y chromosome out for an X chromosome. They flip a couple switches on the DNA. So the different hormones kick in at different rates. They put it in the shake and bake, and a couple of months later, out comes a fully grown adult female, and they bring her before Adam. And Adam says, at last, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This one was taken from man. I will call her woman. Yeah, she's my sister and she's my clone. And Adam understood it. Adam understood that that they used his genetic information, and that's why he also mentioned the rib, because he knew what part was taken. The flesh of his flesh and the bone of his bones, that genetic information was used to recreate a female version of Adam, and essentially Eve was Adam's cloned twin sister. Ooh, incest. No, it's not incest. It's the seeding of the first human couple on the face of the planet. There wasn't anybody that existed before. And they both had perfect DNA. They both had absolutely perfect DNA, but they had something more. They had something that no other creation on this planet had. You see, when you look at how Adam was made, he was actually made out of the elements, out of the actual elements of the ground. And then it says God breathed the breath of life into him. God put the soul into the body, which was formed based on previous genetic references, which we could find in the fossil record. Pretty much the final last model, which was used for modern humans, was Cro-Magnon man. And pretty much after what happened to our DNA, we're back to Cro-Magnon man status. We die. But when we had what the original copy had perfect DNA, and that DNA would have replicated itself perfectly, indefinitely. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you read this account, God didn't, according to the Bible, they didn't make two bodies out of the elements. They only made one body because that's all they needed. Now, here's the real question. Who are the genetic engineers? And why do the churches, or why does religion tell you that the creation of woman is a holy mystery? Yeah. You see, they've been lying to you. Oh, well, it's a holy mystery of God. We don't know the answer to that question. Now, here's the interesting thing.
It's kind of like a bank robber or something like that. You go up to him and you go, bro, where's all the money? And he goes, it's a mystery.
What money? Why don't you guys get a TV crew in here and you can do the next crime drama and figure it out? It's like, what's going on? And you see, because we don't have that perfect DNA, the story gets lost along the way. It's like the old game of, we call it telephone here in the United States. You get a bunch of people lined up together, and you have one person gives a message to the first person, and then they turn around and give that message, the same message, to the next person, and so forth and so on, all the way down the line. And you find out, and then you go see what message you got at the end.
Chinese whispers.
Okay.
That's what we call it, yeah.
That's what it is down under. So that's why I described it. If you guys are up here, everybody would know. So, but you have that game, and by the time you get to the end, the story's changing, and that's what they say about the Bible. Oh, the story's changed. No, wait a minute. You see, the biblical scholars who study the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this is a very closed society. You want to talk about some privately held information. There is a lot more to the Dead Sea Scrolls than are actually being released. But what has been released, when it's compared to the scriptures from a modern Bible today, the scholars say that there is extremely little difference. That the differences that they found were either minor grammatical differences or spelling errors. So when you look at something that was written 2,000 years ago and you say, okay, well, what did it get turned into today? And you look at it today and it's like, wait a minute. It's the same message. So now I ask again, the message hasn't changed. But who are the genetic engineers? Now, here's the curious thing. We couldn't have even asked that question until our science had developed far enough along to realize that DNA could be genetically manipulated, that DNA could be engineered. And now there's a whole technology based around engineering, bioengineering DNA. Vegetable DNA, animal DNA, human DNA, mix and match them all together. They actually didn't have this knowledge until the late 1960s. So you could never understand what was written in Genesis 21 through 23 until after 1960, or at least toward the end of the 1960s, when you could understand what genetic engineering was, and that's exactly what happened there in that account. Now, here's another interesting thing. You look at the fossil record of Earth, and basically nothing happens on this planet for about 3 billion years. And then you get the Precambrian period, which for about 1 billion years, all we have is single-cell bacteria, mostly cyanobacteria, growing and populating and inhabiting the oceans of the ancient primordial oceans. And after 1 billion years, about the most sophisticated thing we have are phytoplankton, zooplankton, and some simple jellyfish, but they're not sure about the jellyfish because jellyfish don't leave much of a fossil. And then all of a sudden, literally, geologically speaking, overnight, there is so much DNA dumped on this planet that there has never been such an amount of DNA on this planet since. There have only been reduced numbers of genetic information on this planet. It would be easier to explain. Picture this: 1600s. You're sitting in the middle of the woods in what is now Central Park, and you're camped out with your family. You're one of the local Native Americans there, and you all cuddle in for the night and you go to sleep. And when you wake up the next morning, Manhattan is built around you. Skyscrapers, hotels, everybody's there. It's all built around you. It would be easier to explain how that could happen than how all that genetic information just spontaneously appeared. Scientists don't have a clue. They say, oh, well, the oxygen level's at 23%, and life just happened. Yeah, life just happened to the extent that it's never happened. We've never had so much life on this planet since.
What is it about the scientific profession that makes them only look at evidence but not actually do any thinking? I don't get it. I mean,
call educated ignorance.
Ignorance.
See, that's
there has to be a way of splicing those words together. Something between education and ignorance. I'll come up with it in a minute. But anyway, sorry, continue.
Well, that's basically what it is. What academia has become today is what the church was 1,000 years ago. Oh, you got to prove that. You're saying something different than what we've told you? You're going to burn in hell. Let's burn them at the stake. You know, that's the level that academia has been reduced to. Now, interestingly enough, and here's, you look at my ancestry, and my ancestry was some of those people that were burned at the stake. On my father's side, my ancestors were Huguenots, and they, because of religious persecution in the late 1600s or early 1700s, they fled France and went to Germany. But when you look at the history of the Huguenots, they were among the first people to protest in what the church was teaching. And what started the protest? A priest translated the Bible into the local dialect of French. And the local people were able to read it. And that's when the church started burning people at the stake. Because people were finding out the truth and they were criticizing the church. And the church has lied to us ever since they came into existence. Funny how that happens.
Which makes one believe that they came into... Yeah, but they came into existence for that very reason, I suspect.
Well, when you go back and look at it, okay, let's look for some more scientific evidence. Now, here's my explanation. The only way you can logically explain how that much DNA material gets here on this planet is through extraterrestrial or interdimensional means. There is no other real explanation. You don't just have a city pop up overnight. You just don't. I don't know if you folks have them down under, but here in America, we have what we call a pill bug. And you usually find these things in damp, dark places, sometimes under some rotten wood, or, they'll make their home in the bottom of your wet basement. And they just look like a brown segmented beetle. They look like a really tiny millipede, only about a half-inch long. And we call them pill bugs or sow bugs or potato beetles. Those are common names for them here in the United States. Well, once upon a time, back in the Cambrian era, there were over 17,000 different kinds of those things, and they all lived in the ocean. Now there's only one. From over 17,000 different kinds down to our last variety. How about that? Talk about extinction level events. And yet that's what we're facing with Fukushima, is an extinction level event. Yeah.
I was listening to Dr. Jonathan Gray, an archaeologist from New Zealand, and he went out to the Ararat mountain ranges just outside Syria and kind of very close to the border with Turkey. And they found frickin' Noah's Ark, bro. It was 500 cubits in length. It had 5 decks, and it had titanium rivets holding it together. And all the wood was fossilized and everything like that. Boat sitting on top of the frickin' mountain. And they're
now, what kind of rivets?
Titanium.
Now here's an interesting thing. The world was supposed to end according to the media.
May I clarify? There were actually something like 9 elements, including titanium, within those rivets. So there was some pretty advanced metallurgy going on, and we've only been able to work with titanium in the last 60, 70 years or something.
Yeah, and I want to point this out. Because you opened up a little Pandora's box here. Where'd they get that technology from? Where did they get the technology for that metallurgy?
Well, in the Bible it said before the Great Flood, I think it was like they had an industrial revolution about 200 years or 300 years before the Great Flood kind of thing. Not entirely dissimilar to today. I operate under the belief that there was once a very technologically advanced global society, and it just got totally wiped out, and most records of it went with it.
I started to mention media has told us that, the world was going to come to an end December 21st, 2012. It was supposed to be the end of the Mayan long count calendar, the Long Bak Tune, which is 5,125 years. Now, if you go back in history, 5,125 years, it puts you at the same time as the recordings of the events in the book of Enoch. Now, the book of Enoch records that we had an alien invasion. As is recorded in the book of Enoch, the Watchers invaded Earth. And he actually names the top 20 of them, but there was over 200 that were involved, at least in the book. And the Bible doesn't say much about this. The Bible says that the daughters, that men grew in numbers on the face of the earth, and the sons of